In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at multiple upcoming severe weather threats and ongoing. We have one today as well. Over the next 10 to 15 days, we're going to see numerous, as well as multiple other storms on the way. It's going to be a very active pattern, and the temperature pattern is going to be flipping up and down, so we need to take a look at that as well. Let's dive into things, and we're taking a look first off at our European model, and I want to take us towards tomorrow for the day on Wednesday, February 28th. And what we see here is a very major low over Canada with a very major secondary low underneath it for New York State. The primary low up here is a 977 millibar low pressure center, which for those of you that are unaware is relatively strong. And we also have this secondary low, 992, which would be pretty strong for a primary low. So this low pressure system that's kind of just there as a secondary counterpiece here to this primary low is already by itself very strong. And what we see as far as a feature here is a cold front extending southward all the way from that primary low, being aided with more moisture, more instability because of this secondary low that is nearby. And this is allowing for a lot of moisture and a lot of differences in temperatures to take place throughout this storm system. We have the cold, dry air diving southward here and eastward with this cold front. And then we have warm air being fed into the system with a lot of moisture from the south. So this is a pretty decent severe weather setup for today, even into Wednesday, tomorrow, and even the next day following it. Now we have another low pressure system over the northwest here. I think it's a 984 millibar low pressure center, and this is bringing snowfall for the Cascades and the Northern Rockies, as well as rainfall for those lower elevation and more coastal areas. By the time we reach Thursday here on February 29th, what we see is that all of these storm systems will be cleared out from the eastern states. So what we'll be left with is a descending jet stream pattern, which is going to allow for cooler air overall to dive into these eastern areas. But it's going to be relatively dry, so drier and cooler for the day on Thursday on February 29th, with a growing storm system for the northwest. We have 1,000 millibar right here near the coast of Oregon, and a 986 up here in Alberta, southern Alberta, nearby Montana, and this is allowing for a lot of precipitation to build for the northwest. Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, all of these areas are dealing with some sort of storminess. By the time we reach Friday on March 1st, this is what we're going to be taking a look at, is this, again, growing system out in the northwest, now kind of expanding towards the southwest as well in the north central states. We have broad low pressure in this area. That's what I call it when we have multiple low pressure systems in the area, kind of all working together to just create some pretty widespread precipitation, just lower pressure in general for all of these areas in the northwest. We also see a little bit of some storminess growing here for the southeast, and this could bring some isolated thunderstorms and severe weather with it, maybe even scattered in some areas throughout Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and into Florida. Overall, we have a trough growing for the west, and this is allowing for a rising ridge to begin building, especially for the north central states. But not only that, for the eastern states, we're beginning to see this get going. By the time we reach Saturday on March 2nd, what we're going to be dealing with is overall more rainy conditions up and down kind of your southeast areas and into some of the mid-Atlantic. Some thunderstorms throughout this, as temperatures will be more mild to even warmer throughout these eastern and central areas. And not only that, since this air is originating from the Gulf, we're expecting a lot of humidity with it as well. So these could get fired up. You know, we could be looking at low to mid to even high 60s for this day for a lot of the east, even 70s and 80s for the deeper south. So definitely thunderstorms cannot be ruled out. Take a look at the west, though. We have even more storms building as they've just been there for days. They've been parked over this area. We have a stronger low in Montana, a weaker low down here in California, but they are working together to create a lot of snowfall, as you can see, for the Cascades, Sierra Nevadas, and in through the Northern Rockies, as well as rainfall for more coastal areas once again. On March 3rd here, that's going to be Sunday, what we see is still plenty of rainfall throughout this kind of Gulf states and up the East Coast area. And not only that, we still have a lot of storms for the northwest and north central states, including a lot of snowfall out there. Take a look at our jet stream. We have a trough for the west, a big time ridge for the east here. It's probably going to be warmest over the central states, but still a lot of warmth to go around for the eastern states as well here, with relatively cooler temperatures out west. Now let's take a look here at Monday on the 4th of March. And what we see happening is this trough is elongating. We still have a ridge, but it's now kind of centered over the east as it's beginning to move eastward. Likely we're going to see a low develop here over the central states, a cold front underneath, and this is going to help all of this cold air to push eastward eventually towards the east coast, and we're going to see a ridge begin to build for the west. But what we've been seeing time and time again is we see this occur, where we'll have a jet stream more like this, the opposite of what we're seeing on screen now, and then everything kind of moves eastward to where, again, we return to a trough in the west, ridge in the east once again. So let's watch this all play out. We see that storm kind of build, a more minor cold front developing, and what we see is a trough in the east, but we don't really get a huge ridge out west because already we have another trough building in. So what we see is kind of like a double dipping trough here. So we do have that cold air for the east, another round of cold air for the west as well, but I do expect the ridge to return to the east at some point after this point. We have more major storms out west with plenty of snowfall, again for the Cascades, Sierra Nevada, and Rockies. You guys are probably sick and tired of hearing me say that, but that is a common occurrence during the wintertime. And we did have a bit of some storminess move through as we see this cold front develop in the low pressure system form. Nothing as crazy as our first one, but definitely could have some thunderstorm implications as well as severe weather therefore. Now as we move on to the GFS model, what we're going to do here is just keep going. We see our first cold front come through. We take it all the way through kind of into the first week of March, and we do get a stronger cold front on this particular model, especially around this time frame, where it's clear we have some cold air to work with, some drier air, and we obviously have moisture and warmth moving its way into this storm. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit more here than what meets the eyes, and there is some severe weather possibilities for the 3rd into the 4th, 5th, and even potentially the 6th for the deeper south into the southeast, even extending into the 7th. So these multiple days in a row of severe weather is going to become more and more common as we work our way through March into April and obviously May. So no big surprises here, but definitely just want you guys to be aware of all this. We do start to get this kind of southeast flow where we see these storm systems building and we move them through this area. Less of a threat for severe weather typically, unless you're in the very deep south areas. There is some implications there, but definitely some heavy rainfall and flooding concerns throughout the entire impacted area here when we do see these types of storms move up this area. So we'll be watching for that. Still warmer overall through that pattern, and you can see frames like this are becoming very common where we have this kind of semi-decent trough over the west and then a bigger ridge for the central, and even a little bit here for the eastern states. So still in terms and in line with what we've been expecting. Now, as we take a look at the total precipitation, we see a lot for the west and a lot for the east with minimal amounts in between. Kind of typical stuff. I mean, this is an El Nino, so you would expect to see a little bit more for the southwest and a little bit less for the northwest, but this isn't too abnormal. I mean, the west sees a lot of precipitation oftentimes, and so does the east. And then, as we all know, the central states tend to be a little bit drier, especially as you work your way through Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. I mean, this isn't too abnormal. So definitely a lot of precipitation for the west and the east, but you know, not too far off from what you would expect this time of year. The snowfall is going to be gargantuan for the west. I mean, we're looking at feet of snowfall for the northwest, the Sierra Nevadas, and into the Rockies, with pretty minimal amounts here in the east. It's once you transfer into the GFS model that we start to see the Northeast get a little bit more impacted here, states like New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. But again, that's not too untypical of early March into mid-March, so definitely I see this as being pretty possible, pretty plausible for sure. We're going to have to watch and see what comes of this. Is it potentially expands or potentially, you know, subsides here and we end up seeing a little bit less than this? We're going to be tracking this with you guys daily, of course. I did, however, want to show you guys the severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. We're using WeatherBell here, their version of it, but it is from the Storm Prediction Centers where they're getting this data. And the day one outlook here, which is coming to an end soon, I just wanted to show you what today's threat was. We had this general thunderstorm risk here in the lighter green areas for a lot of these pockets. The darker green is going to be your marginal risk, so level 1 severe weather risk is what it's called a lot. The yellow there is your slight risk, where we expect scattered severe weather throughout those areas. Severe weather reports is typically what you would expect to be scattered about in there. And then the orange here is a level 3 enhanced risk. We see some of that near Chicago, and then some of that for further south in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and extending into a bit of Missouri and Kentucky. That is where you expect to see things a little bit more widespread. and that could be happening through the night tonight. Now, as we work our way towards tomorrow here, what we end up seeing is this does expand eastward. We do see a little bit there for the desertous southwest, but we do have this kind of general thunderstorm risk area in the east, and that is where, again, we expect general thunderstorms, not anticipating too much in the way of severe weather reports, unless you're in this darker green area for Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, and portions of Ohio. That is where we do expect potential isolated severe weather reports to come in. And then as we work our way towards day 3, we see that there is a couple of general thunderstorm risks, but our risk is subsiding by this point. For the Pacific Northwest, we expect a little bit there along the coast, which is a little bit unusual for this time of year, I will add. And then for Texas, Louisiana, and a bit of Mississippi as well. This is for the day, by the way, on February 29th through the night and into the morning of March 1st. So keep in mind that these outlooks can change, especially the day 2 and day 3 risk here. Expect it to potentially get upgraded. Usually they start smaller so they can work their way up. So you don't usually expect downgrades here. You expect potential upgrades or them to maintain the outlook is typically what we'll see. Occasionally they'll downgrade it, but they like to be pretty conservative in the long range and work their way up with those outlooks. So that is what we anticipate oftentimes. We're going to start tracking this daily. I think it's an important part of the weather, especially with the enhanced risk today and the impending severe weather season that we have ahead. Definitely going to be something that we're keeping our eyes on nearly daily, unless there's just nothing happening. So we'll be watching this. Listen, this is all for this video. Be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.